One, interventions. I will try, by all means, to respond to them. But for clarification, let me just inform Honorable Jatta that the Finance Minister does not have a utility vehicle, and that I do buy my fuel whenever it's consumed at the end of the month. Just for clarification. After 41, Honorable Speaker, after 41 interventions, when we talk about citizens' budget, I think we are very glad that Honorable Jatta was there during the presentation, and we have been listening to the voices of the voiceless. After 41 speakers, I was carefully listening that we are responding to the calls of the people, and that is help. On page 9 of the statement I made here in this Honorable House, I said that we have two initiatives for 2020. We are setting up the National Health Insurance Scheme that will cover not only the civil servants, but also the most vulnerable in our society, i.e., when the package is unveiled, the health minister will come to this August assembly and present the bill. And the whole idea is about how can we protect our citizens. We are talking about 0 to 5 years old. We are talking about pregnant women for 9 months. We are talking about pensioners. We are talking about Gambians who are over 70 years old. And I think Honorable Jatta will qualify for that. Honorable Speaker, during the year, we've struggled. It is true, whatever we mobilize, we have to allocate. And in the process of allocation, we have very stringent measures that we do when we talk about fiscal consolidation. We do not only disburse the quarterly or monthly figures just like that. There is what is called activity report that you have to present before we disburse, and after we disburse, before the next disbursement. If you don't submit that activity report based on the planned activities, we will not release the next. The other one, in terms of the measures that we plan to do, I think one honorable member was talking about constituency fund. We have something like that for you, but with this one, it will not be disbursed to any honorable member. I think what we said is a collective responsibility to develop our country. You have needs and wants. You have communities that need badly water and other essential utilities. Our program, which we have already featured in the 2020 budget, will be doing it in collaboration with the UNDP, and I'm pleased to inform you that the feasibility study has already commenced. And the whole idea is to identify areas in communities that do need certain facilities like boreholes, like roads. We hope that after 2020, the activities will be upscaled to another level. The reason why we avoid doing anything in terms of constituency, how do we distribute? How can we know that this is the constituency that badly need water or access roads to their clinics or schools? That's why the theme for us this year, we said it is a proper budget. Why is it a proper budget? Number one, let me just share with you the data we have in allocation. Agriculture, the reason for the figure going down is that they have 3 projects that successfully were implemented at their closing. The figure we have is from 298 million to 394. That's for agriculture. For health, we have from 831 million to 1.4 billion. For youth and sports, we have from 79 million to 114 million. For education, we have 1.8 million increased to 2.6 billion. The reason why I am highlighting this is key in the sense that when we do the allocation, we want to make sure that whatever the call was made for last year, and I think everybody will recall that Honorable Jatta did give us a benchmark saying that if we come here, if we come back, he wants to make sure that the minimum that a civil servant will take home is $3,000. And Honorable, I'm pleased to inform you, we have achieved that target. Why is it proper? We have the introduction of the National Health Insurance Scheme, which we have already put in 100 million in the budget, and we know that we will be able to mobilize more resources for the insurance scheme. The introduction of Women's Enterprise Fund, 200 million. The introduction of this Emergency Community Development Program for $250 million. Social Safety Net, 260 million. Banjul Rehabilitation Project, 360 million. Establishment of a full-fledged Women and Children Affairs Ministry, 84 million. Ministry of Health budget has increased. The purchase of drugs, now we're talking about $120 million. Vaccination, 35, these are all GLF. And then we also have our development partners, Gavi, this is for 2020, 127 million. Global Fund, 372. UNFPA, 59 million. UNICEF, 158 million. School feeding program, we've already allocated 90 million. Input subsidy to GGC, this is for the farmers, we have 150 million. School bus service, 15.7 million. Crop financing, 200 million. Women's Entrepreneurial Fund, this is 6 million for the GLF and 200 million cumulative. This is proper as we are concerned. Now, some of the issues that have been highlighted by many honorable members in terms of the breakdown. The new charter of accounts we have, it's very difficult to break them down. What we have agreed for the 2021 budget, we will have annex as explanatory notes to ensure that whatever budget line item that is not featured, we will be able to reveal the line item that the budget line item is embedded in. It's technology. We are migrating to EPICO 10 just to make sure that we have better services to ensure that the capacity increase and the deliverables are also featured. That's why even the presidential visit, a provincial Meet the People store, we have already allocated $6 million. We'll be able to, when we go to the house of the whole committee, we'll be able to reveal all of that. We've already mentioned the school feeding program. The allowances issues, these are mainly, it's a system of checks and balances. It's the PMO, unfortunately we have the permanent secretary here with his technical advisors, that after he will be able to join me to be able to dilate more on these issues that have been confronting us. So most of these things that are there that we really attempt to present to the Honorable House are things that technologically we are updating, we are adapting to a fast-changing technology environment. That is why whenever we decide to move to another level, these are issues that we are confronted with. Youth and sports, most of the honorable members did mention that, and this year, among the measures that we will be coming to present for approval is the sports levy. We are aware that the demand for sports all over has been very hectic, and that the pressure on the budget is too much. That is why the issue of the sports levy will be presented to this August Assembly for approval. For the Ministry of Finance, the electricity and water budget is 30 million. This is because we have centralized certain payments to NAWEC, including all the local councils' NAWEC bills are now settled by the Ministry of Finance. Example, up to June 2019, we have paid the arrears of the electricity bills arrears of all local councils, and you are talking about almost 259 million. We have paid up just to make sure at least NAWEC will have the breathing space it needs to operate as a public enterprise. The operating costs of the Ministry of Finance, these costs are associated with the running of the ISMIS system, in particular license fee and other hardware installed. This is in all government entities utilizing the IFMIS. So it's not a centralized budget just for the ministry to be using. It's all over. The subvention, the total subvention vote for the Ministry of Finance has increased substantially due to an arrangement with GRA, whereby GRA subvention will be based on their collection. We are now, just to give them the incentive, we pay them 4.5% of whatever they collect. I think if you see the performance of GRA, when we presented the revenue forecast last budget, it was chaotic in the sense that they complained. But now I think we stretch them, again, just to highlight the issue of not cutting, but let us augment. And I think the member for Serakunda did highlight that. So that is one thing that I will appeal to the entire House. Please, I know you have your cutlasses to cut, but let us not cut. I think in terms of programming and planning, because we've already negotiated with all of the departments, including even our development partners. What we can do is to come up with something more innovative for next year, because they've already agreed, they have their programs, their projects already planned for 2020. So as at the last minute, if you do the cutting and move to a ministry which cannot absorb what is given to them, then you are force feeding. Force feeding is not healthy. It's not healthy. So I will appeal to the entire National Assembly, let us not cut. I think let us look at areas that we can tap, be innovative, how we can mobilize more resources. But if we cut, there are implications. And sometimes it is very, very, very difficult to explain exactly how these things can have negative impact on the operations of government. Because once you cut, maybe you are even giving the opportunity to others who will say, well, you've cut my budget, I cannot deliver. So that is one thing that I will appeal, that when we go to the committee of the whole House, that we will be able to look at allowances. It's true. But the experts and the sector responsible, these are things that civil servants were paid, are paid $650 a night. They go to a hotel now, like Basse or something, they charge $900. How can they continue to subsidize themselves? These are things that we've looked at, and then it will commence from 2020. IEC, National Audit Office, Judiciary, as far as the Ministry of Finance is concerned, they are untouchable. I think they are protected by the Constitution, but being the National Assembly, I'm sure you already have met with them, and the issues I'm sure you'll be able to resolve it. We did everything possible to create a conducive environment for the private sector. As part of our fiscal consolidation, I'm sure the House will remember that last year, for October, November, December, we instituted a travel ban, which was very, very unpopular. For us, that was a tester, that was a message and a signal to the entire system that certain behaviors will no more be tolerated. When we look at the figures, I came into office July, August, September, and I looked at the figures, and it was growing exponentially. That was why we were able to put the brake. And to our credit, it did yield results and also behavioral change. So what happened, the private sector, as part of our fiscal consolidation measure, the private sector are now enjoying the credit from the banks because of the fiscal discipline. We are not borrowing anymore. We are not borrowing anymore. Whatever we do is to prepare and plan to have like a shock absorber. We are a small country, small economy, developing. We are price takers. Any shock that will hit us, example, the Thomas Cook, the late rains, these are all shocks. But at the time I was making my statement, that time, the model, when we run the model, what we have seen that growth rate will go down from 6% to 4%. We have just run it again. Now, it has gone up between 6 to 6.2%. So these are issues that said, we are on top of issues. We are monitoring closely whatever is happening in the world. Why NDP will reach 2.5%? This is because of the non-realization of the budget support. And when we ask about the budget support and DPOs, they are performance linked. Especially the most important one is if you don't have a fully fledged program with the IMF. We are graduating, when you perform very well, we are graduating from what is called Staff Monitor Program to the ECF. ECF Enhanced Credit, facility will be able to allow us more access to resources. But most importantly, will be also, I will, during the Committee of the Whole House, I'll also update you on our debt restructuring mission, and that will also have impact even on our domestic debt situation. We have sent our officials to all our creditors, and in particular, let me just mention, you have the Kuwaiti Fund, Abu Dhabi Fund, Badia, Islamic Bank, Abu Dhabi Fund, UAE, India. These are all creditors that we've approached. And the whole debt restructuring that we are requesting is to have a freeze. What we said that we needed the fiscal space. And when we have this freeze, for 5 years minimum, we'll be able to have much breathing space, and then we'll be able to plan much better. Because we are choked. The reality is that as a small developing country, sometimes we are confronted with certain shocks that no matter how good your shock absorbers are, it's very difficult to move on. So the whole idea of the debt restructuring is about having a 5-year freeze that will be able to give us the $2 billion savings, $2 billion that will be able to utilize, especially in the areas that we've been talking about, the social sectors. The drugs budget that that most honorable members have also said has been absorbed so far and is still below 50% due to the fact that the Ministry of Health were giving a budget support of 2.25 million euros from the French government. Out of this, they still have $60 million to spend on drugs. So really, if there is anything to say, they are not being underfunded. I think there is enough resources to buy drugs. The settlement of confirmed deaths, this is it is part of the misclassification issue, and it is due to the introduction, again, of the chartered account, the GFS 2014. The correct budget line item should be settlement of confirmed areas, and it is to do with the confirmed areas by the internal audit that they did they did an audit to ensure that these areas or these debts are legitimate and they are not something that was just made out of the blues. So they did a good job on that, and those are the figures that you were seeing. The NBD pledges, we've said that it's a lot of money, 1.7 billion, but almost half of them are loans. So we are doing everything possible to avoid the loans. So far, we've been able to capture purely grants, and that is to the tune of 182.5 million US dollars. So these are the things that we are being very, very cautious, and we want to make sure that whatever money that we have to go in for loans, it must be something that is concessional. Right now, we insist any loan that is coming in must be 50% concession, and that is the external loan mostly. Now, we are hoping that after we go to the whole house with the confirmation from our debt creditors that this debt restructuring is forthcoming, and we are confident that actually is confirmed, that the domestic borrowing amount will be able to definitely go down. Because we run, it's not something that we do the arithmetic alone. It's scientific, and we have a model that we run. So we'll be able to discuss those issues. On the issue of the PEs, the PMO was tasked to revise the manpower budget, and in addition, Cabinet has endorsed for training to be centralized. That is why the 110 million is in there, but it is the entire civil service. The whole strategy is any training that we can do locally, we don't have to go outside again. That is the whole thing, to ensure that every training, and then there will be a training that also is demand-driven. Whatever we need here to be able to build capacity retention, and capacity harmonization, that's when the PMO will be able to, and it will be chaired. It is the executing agency is the PMO, but the chair will be the Secretary General. What plans do we have for the productive sector for 2020? The 2020 budget will focus on key areas that will help provide a conducive environment for growth to be realized in the productive sector. Key among these is the availability of reliable energy supply, which we can all attest that the situation has vastly improved over the past year. In addition to our prudent management of fiscal policies, credit to the private sector has increased by more than 25% on a year basis. We envisage this to continue in the 2020. Finally, the 2020 budget places emphasis on infrastructure development, especially road infrastructure, which would in turn enhance the productive sector. The question, how budgets of various sectors are spent. The Ministry of Finance is continuously pressing all budget execution reports on our website. We post them. So most of the questions that the members are asking is on our website. And I think up to end of October, we have that update. The budget execution report, all of it is there. All the figures are there. If maybe, Honorable Speaker, maybe we can have an arrangement where we can link our website with your website so that any honorable member can have access to it. If not, we don't mind to be coming to do the presentation. But with information technology, I believe that with, even with your mobile phones now, you can access this report. On SOE reforms, I think we'll have to commend the PACPEC on the leadership of Honorable Salah that we have already made audit of half of them. 7 are remaining. But what we want to avoid is when we move ahead and do the execution or implementation of the recommendations with the, our Auditor General, maybe the order, it might take some time. But so we are gathering resources to make sure that the other 7 will be done. We are negotiating actually with the auditors because there were 2 exercises. One is for the ones that have already been done. The remaining 7, we hope that after this, our vision that the type of Gambia we have is to have good performing public enterprises that will come, not only pay us dividends, that will be a good employment generation entities, and that can also pay us the corporate taxes that we need. That is our vision, and we believe that what we have seen so far that the National Assembly is doing, we believe that we will be able to move towards that direction. Under BE15 service, we will unbundle it and give you all the details once we get to the committees. We'll discuss some. I understand the PACPEC, who has already been updated on that, but we will make sure we'll give you all the information today. On disability and social welfare, the budget has catered, we've catered for 22 million for social services and an additional 3.4 million on disability. There is also 4.3 million allocated for social welfare development activities. These are all things that is already in the 2020 budget. On the issue of the debt, Honorable Speaker, if I ask permission just to share with the write-up to be able to share with the House how we have also revolutionized the way we manage our debt. It could be recalled that $2.2 billion 3-year bond was issued in 2017 to finance government deficit and domestic debts reprofiling. The bond will be maturing in August. The bonds will be maturing in August 2020, which is currently included in the 2020 budget for redeeming. So here, we're in a situation where we are now forecasting. Again, the budget estimates, it's just an estimate. It's a planning tool. It's not something that is cast on a stone. So in our planning, we have our own econometric models that we run. Then we look at the figures. And we thought that why don't we plan for a worst possible scenario in the event what happened to us before for the budget support, in the event it did not come, and then come August 2020, all the investors decided to redeem. This is where we said you need strong support of that. That is why it's inbuilt there. But with the good news that we have just have after our team returns from the capitals, we will be able to revise it downwards during the whole House. However, the current medium-term debt management strategy, we have one, 2019 to 2022. The government's intention is to be able to stretch the maturity profile of domestic debt by continuous the issue of long-term instruments like 3 years, 5 years. In the past, all what we were doing is very short time, 6 months, 3 months, 9 months. Now we are now changing. We are saying that we have to really stretch it. This is premised on the prevalence of high refinancing risk from domestic debt portfolio of over 55% of domestic debt matures within 1 year, ending 2018. In light of the above, government intends to continue the issuing of long-term debt security to ease out high concentration of debt maturities within a year and lessen the pressure on the national budget. We have already tested the market, and recently we issued 500 million two-year government bond, that's November 2019, solely to redeem the short-term maturing bills in 2019 to address refinancing risk in the domestic debt portfolio. The issuing attracted, it was oversubscribed by 125%, with a weighted average rate of yield of 9.93%. Is still a single digit. The result of the issuing signals the market-driven and appetite for long-term instruments, which is in line with government medium-term strategies to elongate the maturity profile of our domestic debt. With the above background, government now looks into the possibility of issuing a 3-year bond, which could be used to roll over the maturities of the 2020, or perhaps to redeem short-term maturities, domestic debt reprofiling. However, despite the above, one should also take measures should in case we are unable to get the full subscription, and hence the need to include the $2.2 billion in maturities in 2020 budget for prudent debt management, and it's a precautionary measure just to make sure that we will not have any situation where we will have the issue of how do we pay our salaries. However, the most important part of this is the need to develop a domestic debt market, which can only happen by the introduction of long-dated instruments, hence the need to issue a 3- and 5-year bond is there. Honorable Speaker, I think when the issue of how do we manage our budget, again, I come to the fact that it is all of us. It is our collective responsibility, and how we can develop a partnership where we will be able to look at the issues holistically, and then also respect the rule of law by way of ensuring that every entity that is doing their responsibility cannot and should not be taken away. I think what we can be coming up with is benchmarks to make sure that whatever is being done is closely monitored, and to ensure that they will be coming back to do the reporting maybe quarterly or biannual. On the issue of boreholes, that has also been highlighted by, that has been raised by a lot of honorable members. Government has constructed many boreholes over the years through the Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Project, where government also factored in 10.5 million as its counterpart fund, and an additional 2 million factored in under the Sustainable Water Resources Management. This is the 2019 budget. This is for the drilling of boreholes. Again, coming to the input subsidy, yes, the 150, the question was, what was it for? $150 million budgeted under centralized service is for fertilizers for the farmers. On the UTG, University of the Gambia campus, the donors have now agreed to take over most of the government counterpart funds due to lack of funds from government. And then we will be able to finance and make sure the project implementation is on a fast track. I think due to certain issues that we are confronted with, that was how some of these issues, the construction was delayed. Basse Fatoto Road, yes, the amount budgeted for the land compensation is 30 million. It's already there. The 9.6 million on the development board of the Office of the President comprises of various budget line items, including purchase of motor vehicles 8.5, office equipment 500,000, furniture and fittings 300,000, ICT infrastructure 200,000, and purchase of motorcycles 100,000. The subvention to councils, as I already said, that we've paid $259 million to be able to make sure the councils are no more in areas with NAWEC. So the subvention is budgeted for under the program Strengthening Decentralization and Good Governance Program of the Ministry of Lands. And the amount budgeted for is $8 million as subvention. Somebody asked the difference between, not somebody, but an honorable member asked the difference between residential and house rent. Residential is for civil servants, for grade 10 civil servants, and above 1,700. And for people residing in the Combo St. Mary's area, that's the KMC, house rent is, that's for the 1,000 and for people residing in the Combo St. Mary's area. House rent is for ministers, security personnel, advisors, and provincial postings. The house rent allowance paid to these individuals varies depending on their positions. The school bus services, which I have already mentioned under the basic and secondary education, is we've already allocated. The secondary school management, 7 million, thereby totaling 15.7. This is for the school buses. On the school laboratories, we have factored a total of 28 million under the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, and this can be found on page 143. The other issues raised for projects, the Banjul Rehabilitation Project, it has been resolved, and that we can provide the documentation. That is why the project continues. And the sticking point was, if it is in a dollar-denominated project, then it is classified as a loan that will have to come to the National Assembly for even before we secure it. But this one, it was a pre-financing. It's called, which I was even not too much familiar, it's called the EPC. And the Minister of Works is the expert, and I think he came here on several occasions to explain. Initially, the whole idea was the financing will be done, but it was something that was submitted, and wholly up to today as we are talking, we haven't paid a single butut to the contractor because of the proposal that was made was, I can work for 1 year, pre-finance it. The design, everything is documented, and we can make it available to the clerk of the house. Moving from the foreign to the domestic, to dialysis, this is why it was not necessary to come for the ratification as a loan. No, it's classified under domestic debt. This is why we are here to present to you, the National Assembly, for approval for this year, that we will be able to pay. But again, let me re-emphasize, it was a pre-financing. And all the documentations, including cabinet approval, are available, and we will make sure by tomorrow the clerk of the house will have access to all these documents. So most of the issues, I guess, that the recommendation that all the allowances will now have to be taxed on a gross. I think when we go to the committee of the house, we'll be able, of the whole house, the PSPMO is here, and we will be able to discuss those issues. So basically, Honorable Speaker, I think I have touched on majority of the issues, if not all. Most of them, line by line item, we should be able to address it during the committee of the whole house, and I am available to be to discuss any issue. Again, one of the issues that have been raised over and over is the issue of deficit financing. Deficit financing, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to be able to understand that everybody, all developing countries, they operate on a deficit budget, but it is how you manage it. Now, what we have learned is that not everything is something that can be scrutinized properly. All the projects, we have to make sure investment that we're going to make have a good rate of return or social benefits to the most vulnerable. So these are the issues that we have been battling on, and our models now will be able to reveal if we have any investment that is coming, we'll be able to know, or even contracted any loan. But as of now, what we have insisted, any loan that we are accessing is 50% concession. That is the foreign loan. On that note, I'll still stay if there are any follow-up. Honorable, or do we have to come back during the whole committee of the whole House?
Thank you very much.